Passengers don't want to fly right now because they don't feel safe, and that's just the bottom line.
What we are seeing here is a systemic behavior of airlines to disobey the law.
That the entire industry is operating the same way. Everyone is doing what they can.
From the Zoomerplex in historic Liberty Village, the Zoomer with Libby Znaimer.
The coronavirus pandemic has decimated the travel and tourism industry. Flights grounded, borders closed, attractions gated, and many long-established companies are on the brink of bankruptcy. The world is beginning to reopen, but what is the future of travel without a COVID-19 vaccine? A panel of travel experts is here to discuss, but before we dive in, let's tee up the topic.
Your attention, please.
COVID-19 has devastated the travel and tourism industry, a sector that makes up 1 in 10 jobs worldwide. Air travel is down 95%.
Attention passengers, we hope you enjoyed the flight.
Tourist trips globally are projected to drop by as much as 78%. And destinations are poised to lose up to $1 trillion in tourism income this year.
Please watch your luggage.
Despite countries lifting restrictions, only 20% of Canadians say they're likely to travel in 2020.
We've now reached our destination.
To survive, the industry will have to make serious and lasting changes. But at what cost? In the end, will it change the way we all travel?
There needs to be a lot of trust and confidence restored before people take that leap of faith and book travel and vacation packages. And health and safety are not the only issues. The current airline ticket refund controversy isn't helping. Are travelers ready to get back on the road and in the air? Let's begin with Brett. Hi, Brett.
Hi.
Are travelers ready to get back on the road and in the air?
I'm not sure they are right yet, but we're getting there. I think there's been a lot of things, as you alluded to, that are impeding, if you will, consumer confidence and perhaps even trust in the industry. Certainly the financial downturn, the industry has been hit very, very hard. There's no mistaking that. The future travel credits, which were mentioned at the top, have created a lot of ire among consumers toward the industry. But I think the industry is also doing a lot to help mitigate, if you will, the consequences of there's very little that any of us could have done there's absolutely nothing we could have done to avoid a pandemic. And it really caught the industry off guard. And I'm sure that we will probably look back on a lot of things that we could have done differently or better when we look back on this in the future. But I think certainly the steps that the industry is taking collectively, and it is a collective effort. No one company can do this on its own. And me in my role as chair of CATO, I represent a number of tour operators across the country. We are working together to ensure that we draft, certainly adhere to any government protocols, best practice, call them what you may, but also go above and beyond. And it's really going to be the going above and beyond that is going to create the comfort, the confidence, in my opinion, that consumers are going to require in order to travel again.
Tim, what are the people you represent doing to prepare, and what do you think it will take to get people traveling again?
So what we're hearing from our thousands of travel advisors across Canada is that their clients want to dream, especially after being cooped up in quarantine or self-isolation for many months now. People want to dream about travel. They want to start to think about what they can do once they are able to get outside of their homes. And so what our travel advisors are doing are really helping them dream. And really it's all about personal choice. It's really about their imagination. And really the future is going to be around where they're really personally comfortable traveling. But all that depends on government regulations first.
Jim Scott, you run an airline. Are you busy taking out middle seats and doing other things to be able to distance somewhat on an airplane?
Yeah, you're right. So passengers don't want to fly right now because they don't feel safe, and that's just the bottom line. So we've had to take a lot of mitigating measures to make passengers feel safe. And, you know, if we look back even in February, Airlines didn't really do that much to prevent infectious diseases on board the airplanes. We had sick passengers. It was not uncommon to have people sneezing and with colds and all sorts of issues. So no longer are passengers who are sick going to fly. You know, everybody's wearing a mask so that they don't expel particles from their breath or their coughing. We're wiping down the airplanes or sanitize them every station stop with a product that has holdover time of 10 days to kill the corona virus. The airflow within the aircraft itself has been shown to be like an operating room. It drives in particulars down, not across the aircraft. And it cycles, often twice as much as in a hospital environment. So when we look at all the measures put together, we feel that actually flying is a lot safer now for infectious diseases than it's ever been. It's just that the coronavirus has brought it to attention. And, you know, to give an idea that a deep clean where we actually disinfected the airplane may have happened in the airline industry every week to 3 weeks. Now it's happening every station stop. You know, the idea of wearing masks, the idea of not allowing sick passengers on. This is all mitigated, the conditions, but time will tell. Oh, you know, we have operated throughout this crisis, and we haven't had one single employee contract the disease, and they're flying every day with passengers. So it's going to be when the risk is perceived to be less than, say, driving to the airport, that people will come back again.
So, Tim, what are the people that you represent doing to try to bring customers back?
You know, the relationship between a travel advisor and the client or the consumer is really all about communication. So it's regularly keeping in touch with them, keeping in touch with the travel partners, so with Cato and all the tour operator partners, just to make sure that clients have that confidence in what the future of travel will look like when they are allowed to travel again.
Vivian, you're in touch with a lot of Zoomer magazine readers. You've got a travel club. What will it take? I mean, one of the, I don't know if it's an irony, is that the demographic that is most vulnerable is also the demo that really travels a lot.
Yes, very much so. But it's going to take exactly what Brett said, trust and confidence. But I do think quite a few people will be waiting for the vaccine to hear about it, to want to know more about it. I think that for the Zoomer reader, the Zoomer viewer, and the listener, there's a lot of other things that they can start looking at now. Planning is a big thing for our readers. They love to plan. And so I'll agree with Tim that planning is a big part of the vacation, of the holiday. And I think that memories are a big thing. Traveling with family is a big thing, but really what it's going to take is trust and confidence. I think communicating with the readership, with that demographic, is very important, so they understand that it is safe to get on an airplane, depending on what measures are taken by the airlines. I think that the other thing that airlines and destinations will have to do is come up with something across the board that really speaks to an equality in what they're doing, from a right down to disinfecting the plane. Everyone's got to have a standard, a set standard. And I don't think people are going to just want to travel if one airline does one thing, one destination does another. Some don't take your temperature. So there has to be a consistency across the board.
Okay. When we return, we'll have more of this after a short break.
What we are seeing here is a systemic behavior of airlines to disobey the law.
One hurdle for travelers right now is the fact that airlines are mostly offering vouchers instead of refunds for canceled flights. Some of those vouchers will expire before passengers are ready to travel. Some have to be used for the same destination, not to mention that passengers who paid cash want their money back. The Canadian Transportation Agency suggested vouchers for future travel may be necessary to strike a balance between passenger protection and airlines' operational realities. But that doesn't sit well with consumers like Shah Mohammed, who joins us now. Shah, Hi, tell us about your situation, please.
On January the 20th, I purchased 2 tickets on Air Canada through Flight Hub for travel to Trinidad, departing on February the 29th. I paid a total of $1,104 for both tickets, which included cancellation protection on February the 28th, before we were supposed to travel. My wife and I became very concerned because she suffers from diabetes, high blood pressure. She has a heart monitor. And so we decided to contact the doctor, who advised her against traveling. As a result, I contacted Flight Hub to cancel our flight. The cancellation policy that they offered me, or they sold me, was only for me being able to cancel the flight within 24 hours of my booking. So as a result, I had no choice but to rebook at an extra cost of $700 and for a flight departing May the 26th. On April the 7th, I got notices from Air Canada and Flight Hub that all travel from then on were being canceled. I was offered a travel voucher of $985.48. My further travel plans were to be completed by January of next year.
Shah, I think a lot of other people are in the same situation and very unhappy about it. Let's bring in Gabor Lukash. Gabor, I'm sure you've heard this story many times.
I've heard many such stories. What is a special twist here is that the passenger was made to pay extra to rebook, and then the next flight was canceled. What we are seeing here is a systemic behavior of airlines to disobey the law. The law is quite clear. If a flight is canceled for whatever reason, the airline has to issue a refund. That has been the law for the past 16 years, and it is still the law. However, what we are experiencing is that airlines are pretending that the law doesn't exist, and the government is assisting them in doing so. And it feels as if the Canadian travel industry as a whole were performing a harakiri, a suicide, to demolish the very basic ingredient of what is needed for their long-term existence, long-term sustaining element, which is public confidence. Once this confidence has been broken, people will not want to buy tickets. This is also the reason that in Europe and in the United States, regulators understood that it is vital for the integrity of the system as a whole to compel and enforce the rights of passengers to get refunds, because they in those countries and those states understood that the future of travel hinges on restoring public confidence, at least on the monetary side, as soon as possible.
Gabor, what do you say to the Prime Minister who says if we compel the airlines to pay back everyone, we might not have an airline industry when this is all over?
The Prime Minister is lying to the public. Air Canada has over $6 billion in liquidity. It owes $2.6 billion to consumers. So even after this amount is refunded, they will be still left with $3.4 billion, and right now they are seeking $1 more billion in liquidity from the market. So at least as far as Air Canada is concerned, they are not on the brink of bankruptcy. They are simply trying to use the public's money as an interest-free, non-refundable cash advance. It is not the traveling public's job to look after the sustainability of any kind of private business.
I'd like to bring in Jim Scott. Jim, you run an airline. What's your view of this?
Well, I can't speak to the other airlines, of course, but with us, our money is held in trust. When somebody books, we don't receive the money until it's actually flown. So it doesn't make a difference to us if it's refunded or if somebody books again. So if we have no hope of being able to provide the flight, like for instance, even in this coming summer schedule, we may have to take out some destinations, we will 100% give refunds. We find though that a lot of people, because we don't charge that much, $100, $200, they will take a voucher, and we like to know that at some point they're going to use our services. So if they'll come to an agreement that they'll take a voucher, we're happy, but that's only if they can have a reasonable expectation of using it in the domestic market. But international markets, of course, are closed down, so that's a different tone. The other issue for us, though, is the cancellation rate. People that book tickets and don't show up, it went as high as 79%. And those people then just didn't show up for the flight, and then they're trying to seek refunds. And right now, the cancellation rate, or the no-show rate, I should really say, is 26% for us. That's people that have booked. We were running the flight, and they just don't show up for the flight, and then because they're scared of flying, of course. So there's a little bit more there that we have to deal with. So we don't refund people that don't show up for the flight. We do if we have no hope of providing the service, and we try to keep their business with vouchers if we can provide the service domestically and they agree to it.
Tim, what about you? I think that people have had different experiences depending on how they book. So for instance, on my show the other week, I had one person complaining about canceling, about a cruise canceling, and they booked directly and they will not get their money back. And then another person saying, well, they went through a travel agent and they did get their money back, same cruise line.
Every situation is so different, Libby. It's hard to say one over the other what will happen. But the important thing with working with a travel advisor is that they are there to act as your advocate because you have that personal relationship with them, as opposed to booking with an online travel agency where you may be just a number. When you book with a travel advisor, you at least have someone else in your corner to work with you and with their longstanding partners, as is often the case, to come up with a solution that works for everyone.
Brett, how do you think this will affect travel going forward? I mean, people believe they paid, they did everything they were supposed to do, and they're getting stuck.
And the complicated thing is the fact that, and it's almost everyone's right, it's a very complicated issue. Listening to the other panelists, there's things we know and things we don't. And the one point that we have not mentioned yet is we don't know yet when travel can resume. We currently have a government-imposed travel advisory which prohibits against any non-essential travel, but we have no window of when that's going to be eased in any way. So whether this is going to be a travel restriction which will go on for another month or 2 or 3, we have no definitive answer. We only have hope, and quite frankly, hope is not a very good strategy. So while I appreciate what everyone is saying on the panel, I think the fact of the matter is the industry is really struggling right now, not so much because of what we've been, what's been inflicted, but the fact that we just don't know when the recovery will begin. And we've heard a little bit about from the airlines with regard to when they're going to fly, primarily domestically.
Okay, we need to take a short break. More when we come back.
I think Canadians want to travel. They just want to stay closer to home until everything is a bit more relaxed.
Domestic travel is expected to be the first to pick up, but there are international destinations that may have appeal in the midterm. Places that had low COVID numbers like the Caribbean or Greece. What we're hearing too is that we can expect people to travel less, but travel better. Are there so-called safe destinations? And what do safe travel and accommodations look like? Tim.
It really comes down to personal choice. It's really about the personal, individual preference that someone has about where they'd like to go, the risk tolerance that they have. But it's also about where they're going, and not only where they're going and what they're facing when they get there in terms of any sort of quarantine situation, but also returning to Canada. And at this point, anyone who's leaving the country and coming back has to go into a 2-week quarantine period. So the first thing that needs to change is government regulation.
Vivian, I recently was looking at pictures in Greece, one of your favorite destinations and mine as well, and they're opening up and they're getting ready for tourists. I can tell you I was there last summer, but no way am I going back this summer. What about you?
Well, I would love to go back, but we can't right now. Canada did not make the white list, the so-called white list that Greece is going to be releasing, and Canada's not on that list yet. Other countries like Germany and Australia are.
Sorry, what is the white list? I'm not aware.
It's a list that the tourism body in Greece is rumored to be releasing on the 15th of June. So we'll see what comes up from there. But right now, Canada is not on that list.
And that's allowable countries?
Yes, right now what they will accept. They will also release another list, I believe, on July 1st, and Canada may be on that list. Quite a few European countries are looking at cases per 100,000. So based on population, anything under 50 new cases a day of 100,000 out of 100,000 is something they're looking at that's fairly acceptable. Europe is really trying to just stay open for Europe right now. I think that, as you said, domestic travel is going to be a thing. Our nostalgia is something that we really have a deep connection to Canada, and we do staycations very well. So we're going to start there. I think Canadians want to travel. They just want to stay closer to home until everything is a bit more relaxed. A lot of us don't want to come back from a place like Greece, which is gorgeous, and have to quarantine at home for 14 days. But, you know, the memories and the photographs, as you said, is a huge part of what travel is about now. Sharing those pictures, looking back on them, and really sort of inspiring yourself to want to go next. But I say it's pretty much in the car first and on an airplane as soon as everything else is given the green light.
Jim, what plans do you have?
Well, you know, we're seeing even in the next couple of days, you know, load factors up at 75% for the routes that we run across Canada. We're running trans-Canada flights. But for the most part, the passengers haven't come back. The airports are quite empty. And so we're looking at July 15th before we put on additional flights and more aircraft capacity in the fall.
Brett?
I'd get on a plane and as soon as I can. I love to travel, and I think there's a lot of people that do. And collectively, we're all going to have to do a lot to renew consumer confidence and to assure people that however and wherever they travel to, that they're going to travel well, they're going to travel safe. Insurance will be a big part of that. And there are many companies, insurance companies right now that have carve-outs, if you will, for COVID-19. So until we have that covered, you're going to have some issues around who can travel, even when the restrictions are over. But I definitely think there's a large cohort of people who have been cooped up. We've all been cooped up. We want to get out, and we want to travel, whether that's within Canada. I think Canada will fare very well with the rest of the world. I think when borders begin to open up, I think there will be a lot of people internationally who will look at Canada as a safe place to go. We have a good healthcare system. We have a broad and very good, robust healthcare system. So I think Canada will fare very well. The industry, I think, on the whole, is looking for things, some sort of recovery for late summer, hopefully early fall. Now, I don't think things will restore to the new normal, whatever that is, and that new normal will have a new consumer too, a consumer that is much more empowered. And I know Gabor and others agree. There's going to be things that the industry is going to have to change, and the consumer will drive that change.
Gabor, what does the new normal in travel look like to you?
That's a very difficult question. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. Personally, I have family in Hungary in Europe. And of course, I did not go, and I will not go until it is safe to travel, until possibly there is a vaccine, because I have a 90-year-old grandmother. I don't want to go there to see her and just to infect her with something. So certainly I'm finding lots of comfort in what Jim is saying about how airplanes are being disinfected more. But I will be really calm once the vaccine has been reached or there's a clear cure for the COVID-19. In terms of the environment, right now, we have difficulty getting visitors from outside. In terms of leaving Canada, I just think it has to be clarified, what Brett said, that there is an advisory but not a prohibition. There has never been a prohibition against leaving Canada. If you, as a Canadian citizen, want to leave and there's another country which is allowing you to enter, then you can leave anytime, even now.
Okay, we need to take a short break. We'll be right back.
First thing that passengers will want to know at this point is, Will I get back my money if there is another problem?
Incentives are being introduced by airlines, resorts, and hotels as a way to entice passengers to come back. Will those work, or is it too soon? And what about the price tag attached to those new cleaning protocols and reduced seating on planes? What does that mean for consumers? Tim, are people rushing back or asking, well, when does that big discount take effect?
People are curious, that's for sure. They absolutely want to dream, and they're curious about what, as we all are, curious about what the future of travel will look like. The thing that they're most interested in hearing about right now are, as you mentioned, not so much discounts, but around cancellation policies. You know, they know what's going on with canceled trips that have already been booked right now, but they're curious about if they make a booking right now, what happens to their options in the future. And so we're really seeing that partners, travel operators across the board are coming up with really flexible cancellation and change policies. And that's really driving a lot of positive momentum that we're starting to see around bookings.
Vivian, are your people looking for a discount to say, I can't wait to take that cut rate cruise?
I think flexibility is much more important to our readership. They're already cruisers. I think cruising will come back in our demographic. They're waiting for that unpack once, visit 5 places opportunity as much as possible. But again, the trust and the confidence, the insurance is really key, and flexibility, knowing they're traveling with a company that has flexibility, allowing also for the fact that the demographic, as we know, is in a higher risk category. It's important for them to have that flexibility, and travel companies and cruise lines and airlines will reap the benefits once we feel confident enough to get on those planes and get on those ships again. We will come back more than we did before. It's just the matter of trust and insurance. And I know we talk about the vaccine, but it's something that people are really thinking about. So flexibility is key.
What I'm hearing here is that, you know, don't worry about offering a big discount to start. Am I hearing you guys right?
I agree with you. I don't think it's incentive now is more about safety, security, confidence, the ability to travel without feeling unsafe, I guess is one of the words, or unhealthy. And I think that it is more because you do in the end get what you pay for. And I feel that if things are discounted too deeply, where do they cut first? Is cleanliness where they'll cut first? So these are things that are really key and important. Hotels across the board are coming up with standard NASA almost level cleaning, cruise ships as well, airlines, the filtration system. So I think that those are all things that people will be looking for travel, not necessarily discounts.
Jim, you're already a discount airline. Are you cutting prices further?
No, we're about 30% below the other carriers, and you know we have a higher load factor than the other airlines. But some of these cleaning techniques and so on, you know, when we first started to disinfect the airplane at every station stop, it took an hour, and now we're down to 10 minutes, and we're using, you know, efficiency, and our cost is below $2 per cleaning as far as the product's concerned. So we're just going to get efficient at it. We're going to get good at it, and it's going to be here for a long, long time. The fact that you're going to have to take better health care of your passengers.
Gabor, will a deep discount make passengers forget that whole voucher business?
I don't think so. The first thing that passengers will want to know at this point is, will I get back my money if there is another problem? Do I have guarantees in place to ensure that the money is back into my account if the airline cancels? And I'm aware that Flair does have a policy of keeping the money in trust, and so they don't have these kind of issues. I didn't hear much issues about Flair. It is typically Air Canada, Air Transat, WestJet, Swoop, and Sunwing that are in the news for the Canadian airlines that are involved in these issues, and there is a reason. I would see a policy, possibly even a requirement, to follow the same model for all airlines, for all tour operators, for all cruises, would be a great gift to the industry, to create a baseline where you know that you can pay in confidence because you will see back your money.
Okay, we will be right back after a short break.
No one should travel anywhere without looking into insurance, whether it's international travel, even domestic travel between provinces.
Welcome back. The travel industry is banking on the fact that people who have the travel bug are anxious to get back out there. But COVID-19 is still unpredictable, and right now there isn't much of an insurance safety net. What kind of coverage will I be able to get if I choose to travel once the borders are reopened? Okay, let's start with Brett.
Well, I think the operative word that we've all been talking about is flexibility and not knowing what is going to happen in the future. I think it's just important to know that there are a wealth of different insurances, including cancellation insurance, which are available. I think the bigger concern that we've all been talking is about flexibility and the ability to cancel or change. That isn't based on the terms and conditions of the entity or the corporation that you're the airline or the tour operator that you book with. It's based on the will of the traveler or the consumer. And I just would assure the viewers that there are a myriad of different insurances, including cancel for any reason, available. That shouldn't be the reason why people don't travel. There's a lot of reasons why people may feel uncomfortable with traveling right now, but insurance shouldn't be a barrier. The consumer and the traveler will simply have to be choosy.
Okay, I've heard stories about people who had cancellation insurance and were told that it didn't apply in this case. I guess it's a force majeure. My understanding is that most people who had health insurance for their travels, when this hit, they were told, okay, we are extending this. You've got a week or maybe 2 weeks to get home, and then you are cut off. And those are two situations that would stop a lot of people from traveling. Vivian, what's your take on this?
I think that insurance is always available, and I think it's really important to take it. I know that our readership, our viewership, our demographic, insurance is one of the most important questions that they ask. And as Brett said, there's always insurance available. What I think you're talking about is more that general insurance that a snowbird would take out. They go to Florida or Texas or California, and suddenly this pandemic comes up and they can only cover you to a certain point. So when going forward, I think the idea of insurance will change a little bit in the mind of the traveler, but knowing that it's available and cancellation for any reason, many companies offer that insurance is worth taking, worth looking at. And as Brett said, it shouldn't stop you from traveling because it's available for the traveler.
But I've heard from a lot of people who said they had cancellation insurance and they weren't paid. I don't know if there were limits on the cancellation insurance.
The most common thing that we see on our end is passengers who had a cancellation insurance and they were not paid because the airline is providing vouchers. And either the insurance did or didn't have some fine print, but in any event, the interpretation the insurance gave is that, oh, you got vouchers, so therefore you didn't have any losses. So there's another area where I'm seeing a significant loss of public confidence, loss of trust, that you assume normally that when you buy an insurance, they will cover you for the risk for which you paid. It's not an expectation they will cover you for everything, but if there was a risk there, you can cancel without a reason, or if the airline cancels, they will give you back, the insurance will give you back the money. And all of a sudden, you're being told, well, that's not how it works. These people are unlikely to buy an insurance again unless it is clarified both in a regulatory, legal, and contractual way that they are fully covered. It's another, I would say, byproduct of the situation, another victim of the source of the problem, which is that some of the large airlines in Canada decided to provide vouchers unlawfully instead of refunds. So what needs to happen is, and this show today is a really first attempt to do so, is a roundtable discussion about how to restructure and travel in a way that everybody is protected.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Gabor. And absolutely, travel advisors often feel like they're in the middle of everyone in a conversation like this, but that is what they're there for. That is the value that a travel advisor provides to their client. And insurance in particular is complicated. No one should travel anywhere without looking into insurance, whether it's international travel, even domestic travel between provinces, depending on what type of assurances you're looking for. You should be looking at insurance, and you should be talking to a travel insurance expert.
There is a certain kind of insurance here in Ontario. There's an organization called Tyco, and that they are meant to ensure that if a travel operator goes bankrupt, that you'll get your money back. But does that recourse work for any other situation?
What we have seen is a complete failure of TICO actually to protect consumers. They have been siding with the large operators and just telling people a voucher is fine, even though there was no legal basis for it. But they have taken the consumer adverse position that vouchers are as good as cash, and they have shown their true color. It's a typical problem we are seeing here. The only province where I'm seeing some limited level of activity, which is positive, is Quebec. In Quebec, they have a similar fund for consumers. They don't seem to be having enough money, as I understand, to cover all the demands, but at least they have not made a public declaration that vouchers are fine. And the organization Option, which is a Quebec consumer organization, is doing a lot to ensure that, at least in that province, the provincial authorities are held accountable.
Okay. We need to take a short break. When we come back, final thoughts from our panelists. It's now time for final thoughts from our panelists, starting with Brett.
I think the final thought I'd like to leave your viewers with is the fact that we have to be careful that we don't whitewash the, if that's maybe a bad term, the entire industry with one swipe. There are a lot of corporations, entities within the industry that are doing what they can to the best of their ability to protect consumers, to refund. Not everyone is issuing future travel vouchers. There are a lot of companies that are still refunding cash. I happen to work for one. So it really comes down to buyer beware. Not the entire industry is operating the same way. Everyone is doing what they can in a very difficult situation. Buyer beware. It is going to be a new consumer. The consumer is empowered. There are lots of options. They can have flexible options, and they can certainly make sure that whoever they book with acts as a fiduciary in a fiduciary role, because ultimately it's their money, and they need to make that decision on who they book with.
Tim.
This is complicated. It's complicated, it's messy, it's unprecedented. And so I would just ask people to remember that. Trust the experts, but also if you're seeing something that you don't like, please speak up. But in the end, travel will resume, it will come back, domestic first, international to follow. But please continue to dream, continue to work with travel advisors who will be your advocate, who are the experts and have your best interests at heart.
Gabor.
Travel will come back sooner or later. The question is when and how. And as consumers, we can write that. We can decide that. When next time you book, look up how the company you're dealing with behaved during this crisis. Were they people who got out of their way to help you, or were there people who actually withheld your money, who were just giving you the runaround? Vote with your money.
Jim.
Well, I think in the last 50 years, this is the third time that the airline industry has experienced the lack of passengers because of a safety issue. In the 1970s, there was a lot of airline crashes, Tenerife and so on. And the airline industry had to react with different standards and training, and the passengers came back. And then 9/11 occurred and the terrorist attacks. For 3 years, people were really reluctant to fly, and we made adjustments to security and to fortified cockpit doors. And after a while, people just saw it as normal and came back flying. And now we have a health issue, is how Do we take care of people's health when they're on the airplane as far as the transmission of infective diseases? And, you know, we've made huge changes already, and I think the statistics will show that in the coming months and years, and people will feel comfortable flying again. And then there'll be something else maybe in another 10 or 15 years. But I think the measures that we put in have more than mitigated, and it's just a matter now of people feeling comfortable again flying, but it will take a while.
Vivian.
Well, I say don't stop dreaming and don't stop planning. Keep your wanderlust going, because it's important to keep the idea of the freedom of travel. And we adjusted very well to the not so free sanctions on travel with no liquids and taking off your shoes. So we have short memories in that way, and we learn very quickly. And I think information is the most important weapon we have. So research, get online, ask your friends, talk to a travel advisor or an agent, talk to tour companies that you've maybe traveled with in the past. Get in the car and think about a staycation at home. We're very good at it in Canada, and summer's here, so why not explore your backyard? But just keep it going. Keep travel top of mind and demand more. Ask for more when you're talking to the experts, when you're talking to the advisors, and when you're researching online.
Okay, thank you all. That's all the time we have. Now, before we start traveling again, not only will we have to feel safe, we'll also have to start reading the fine print to make sure we know what will happen if our plans are interrupted. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.